People who have straight-up rage quit a job. What was the final straw? Not me, but a colleague once wrote a long stinker of an email, hit send at 10:30 a.m. and exited the building immediately. He blind copied all receivers but sent it to multiple departments of a large multinational I was working at. No one knew who didn't get the email, except for the gasps and OMGs around the office. He was completely disgruntled, and went in on multiple managers, supervisors and various colleagues with absolute venom. It was amazing, still the best work email I've ever received, and some shit he called out actually had to be addressed by management. It brought about a lot of positive change. If you're out there, Khalil, that was awesome. Many years ago, while working in a manufacturing facility, my boss came into work already pissed off because his wife served him divorce papers. Saying, "Good morning," was apparently enough to set him off, and he picked up a wrench from the table and threw it at my head. I ducked, it missed. Then I just closed my toolbox and wheeled it to the truck. Lol. I think I know why she served him divorce papers. I never have. But my favorite example was when a coworker in student transportation, who had finally gotten a position she wanted after years of suffering through stress in another, was called by management over the summer and told she was being reassigned to the stressful position because no one else wanted to do it. She had fought too long and hard to get what she wanted, and her immediate response was, "Then tell me what I need to do to resign." She did, and she's been at peace with her decision ever since. Holy shit, I've been there. It ended up working out, but kind of the same thing. I found out I was denied a bunch of promotions or transfers because my boss in the deli needed me too much to let me go. I called the manager, union rep, anyone who would listen. My proposition was easy enough: if the department can't stand to lose me, then the entire store will. I had a lot more reasonable arguments, but I think I had them with that. I start my new position Monday. When I was driving home and my blood pressure shot through the roof cause somebody was driving the same make, model and color car as the boss. Obviously that wasn't the straw, just the recognition that there was to be no more straws. I was flat out lied to about the position. It was a management position at a residential mental health facility, and I had taken it, leaving a great paying but stressful position, because it wouldn't require travel and was supposed to be much more laid back. On top of many other issues, I ended up having to work 8 weeks straight without a single day off, even weekends and one holiday. So after a very heated meeting with upper management where one person was flat out lying to cover their own butt, I sent a resignation email from the parking lot. At one office job, I quit after the first day because the lady training me would ignore me when our manager wasn't around, and I caught her snooping through my purse when I went to the bathroom. At another job at a clinic, I quit after a month because they made me do a solo receptionist shift without training me on what I needed to do to open the clinic, and then I got yelled at for not knowing what to do. In front of patients. It was so bad, some of the patients came up to me after and asked if I was okay. My boss cursed me because I took a phone message for him, because he was already on a call. Apparently he was eagerly awaiting the call I answered and would have preferred I interrupted him. I threw a pencil at the wall, said, "Do I look like a mind reader? Cut me my check." I quit. He tried hard to backpedal, but there had been many previous straws. This was 20 years ago. My fiancée had been hospitalized for 16 months after a car accident. When she passed away, my boss would not let me have time off for bereavement because we were not legally married. The boss told me I should be sleeping at his house because that's the level of dedication he needed from me. Bye. Please tell me you're joking. Godfather's Pizza. The manager wouldn't give me my paycheck at 8 p.m. on Sunday because the money might not be in the account yet, but I could pick it up at 9 a.m. Monday. This was decades ago, before direct and mobile deposits. The bank wouldn't be open until the next day anyway. All of the paychecks were literally in his hand at that moment. There were lots of issues before that, but that was the final sign that the manager was completely uninterested in reason. In the next few weeks nearly everyone else quit, then the manager was finally fired. One very busy night while waitressing, I was standing at a table of 12 in the middle of taking their order when another waitress came up to me and said our boss wanted us in their office that instant. So I leave my full section in the middle of chaos to go see what the problem is. My boss began to chew us both out because the other girl asked if I would switch shifts with her, and I had agreed. I didn't say anything but was obviously annoyed because I had just left all my tables thinking there was some sort of emergency. My boss looked at me and asked why I looked mad, and I told him, "I feel like this could have been sorted out without me. If you didn't want her to leave early, you could have just told her no instead of pulling me away from our customers." They said, "If you're going to have an attitude, get your shit and leave." I said okay and went to transfer my tables. I was over it. I had worked there 3 years and the owners were alcoholics that treated us like garbage and spent all the company on themselves instead of getting ingredients to make food or paying their employees. The other waitress came back out and said our boss wanted me back in the office. I went in and they said, "Put your apron back on, you're not fired." I said, "You're both fucking crazy if you think you can treat people the way you do and expect them to want to work for you," and I walked out. As I was leaving, they came out behind me saying I would regret it and was never allowed back if I left. I threw up my middle fingers and kept walking. Funny part is I let my boyfriend take my car to work that night, so I had to walk a mile home and break into my house rolling on the floor laughing. Had a sweet schedule working security in a Class A office building. 3 swings, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and 2 graves, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., per week. My weekend was Friday and Saturday. The graves were actually really chill, easy to deal with. I liked them. But only 2 of them. Then we get a new security company. All the supervisors are fired and new ones from the new company are brought in. Suddenly I'm working 5 graves. I ask for a change to swing. No dice. They offer to move me to a different site. It's 5 graves again. I find out my old supervisor is now working as security manager at a local mall. I give him a call and he offers me a job. I took it. Grabbed my uniform from the old company. Drove to the office. Walked it. Dropped my uniform on the director's desk, turned and walked out. Went down to the mall and picked up my new uniform. Mine? I was tired of doing a 3-person job. My boss following me around, calling me at home during meetings when I was sick, talking to me outside the bathroom door was making me crazy. I came back from vacation one day to find piles and piles of work that other people could have done. I quit, packed my shit and left. Middle finger. Similar for me. I had to go to the hospital for a health emergency and was out for a few days as a result. Came back to nothing done while I was out. Then as I'm back they kept following up on when I'd be done with what they left for me that they could have done while I was out. It was a stress-induced health thing I'm sure, and I decided I wouldn't let them kill me. Was promised that if I got my accounting degree they would move me to IA so I could get hours towards my CPA. Worked my ass off, graduated, and the boss said, "Yeah, we're going to move you to customer service." Sound good? Stayed late that night drafting a company-wide, "fuck you" email. Probably shouldn't have done that in hindsight, but some bridges just begged to be burned. Khalil? Was having a meeting with the boss who was a difficult guy to work with, and he stood up and punched the wall. He wasn't doing it jokingly. He bare-knuckled went at the wall of his own office like he was in the gym hitting a punching bag. I sat there in astonishment for about 2 seconds, then stood up and left. Cleared out my desk, exited through the back door without a word to anyone. There's no place for that conduct in the professional world even if the guy does own the company. I was working as the kitchen bitch at a 24-hour Greek restaurant. Hired as dishwasher, also doing cold prep and maintenance. I was the guy peeling 50-pound bags of onions, carrots, potatoes, as well as making dry ribs, pizza, salad. I had booked off 3 days over a weekend. Got called on day 2 at 7 a.m. telling me I was late. Got there and was told I was on the 11 a.m. start. Then it got changed to 4 p.m. when I went in again. Then got changed to 11 p.m. when I went in for 4 p.m. And when I went in for 11 p.m. it was changed again to actually have me off for the 3 days. 4 schedule changes in 24 hours. Laws here say 1 week minimum notice. That owner would change the schedule after you clocked out to say you worked shorter hours on a regular basis and you pretty much had to check at 7 a.m. to see if you were on for the day. I had my choice words, told them I'd be back in 2 weeks for my paycheck. Worked at an upscale busy bar a couple years back right after COVID. We were constantly understaffed, overworked, and treated like shit from management and customers. One Friday night, my manager let the other bartender go early, because he had a crush on her and wanted in her pants. I got overwhelmed by a rush and he started bitching at me about not being able to handle the bar. I looked at him in the eye, about to really rage, and without a word walked to the back into the liquor room, grabbed 2 bottles of Jameson, put them in my backpack, and walked out the front door. My manager's fearful, confused face while asking, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" was absolutely priceless. Best decision I made, and I'm not joking, LMAO. Worked in retail, sprained my ankle really bad while ice skating. Couldn't so much as get out of bed. Had to call in and take 2 days off before I was even able to limp to work. Soon as I got back in, manager pulled me into his office to scream at me for taking 2 days off. For a physical injury that physically made it so I could not do my job. Threw a cold cup of coffee on him and walked out. My only regret is that the coffee was cold. I was a supervisor of housekeeping at a hotel. Every holiday all of management would take off, leaving me the highest in charge. I asked for a raise after working a full year of holidays as the only management and was denied the next year on the biggest party day in the city. I set all my employees up with their work and texted the managers a picture of me at the bar partying, telling them the hotel might be on fire. I don't know, I quit. Had to drive to a site, directions were wrong. Ended up having to walk a mile in North Texas in July with 35 pounds of materials. ETA, this is pre-cell phone. The owner of the company told me to fire a woman for arriving to work right on time. It was always something different with him. Some ridiculous new rule that he applied retroactively to suit whatever mood he was in on any given day. And that particular morning, he took it as a personal insult and a show of blatant disrespect that his employees didn't arrive early. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't fire this woman, who I didn't even particularly like, to satisfy this new whim of his. So instead of firing her, I marched into his office and quit myself. Funnily enough, the woman I wouldn't fire continued working for him for years. She might even still be there now, 20-some years later. I had a boss at a dog daycare who was a pure sociopath. She deliberately tried to set her employees against each other with gossip and listened to our conversations on the remote cameras and used what we said against each other. It gets worse, but she heard me talking to another employee about finding another job, then confronted me and told me she would just take all my hours away if I was going to quit. Then she heard me tell another employee I contacted the Department of Labor to find out if that was legal. It is, and ambushed me after lunch to fire me in front of other employees. So I heard you called the Labor Department about your hours, that won't be necess. And at this point I realize this is the only chance I'm gonna get to just unload on this bitch, and I'm taking it. I went off. Okay, first of all, you insane Brazilian bitch. WHO, the fuck do you think you are? I unleashed the beast for 10 straight minutes right in her fucking face. I told her about when we lied to her face about throwing away shock collars she used on the customers' dogs without their knowledge or consent. How she's a miserable and ugly human being. The employees hate her. We all dread her coming in because she fucks everything up. How she was fucking stupid. Her husband is a pedophile and probably pissed. Raked her over the coals about the time she forgot a customer's dog in the car for 3 hours in May and then lied to the customer about it. I remember one point I yelled, "Didn't you ever fucking wonder why everyone WHO quits this fucking shithole has nothing good to say about working here? It's you. You're a miserable bitch." And eventually I gave her the finger, said, "Fuck this and fuck you, I'm out." I talked to one of the employees who witnessed the entire thing later and he said, "Well, you made a lot of good points." Was told I did not have experience to move up. Hired a person with 1/20th of my experience in that position. Well, I'm genuinely about to right now after my manager told me our dishwasher is broken and won't get fixed until at least Thursday and I have to pull solo shifts next week. Because we're seriously understaffed after 2 people were let go in January, despite me telling management repeatedly that we actually need more people to account for all the vacation days and sick leaves happening right now. Update. Apparently restarting fixed the broken dishwasher. So that's at least one problem off my back. I was vomiting in the parking lot every day before walking into my job from stress. Then one day I was kicked in the teeth, literally, by one of the clients, and my boss would not let me leave to go to the dentist. I went anyway, was docked pay for my time at the emergency appointment, and then they begged me not to sue. I quit. Worked at a Korean barbecue restaurant. They said since I was unexperienced they will cut my wages. Hired me as a server and made me clean toilets and grills all day. 12-hour shift. Gave me $9.45 in cash. Quit on the spot. Wanted to take long service leave holidays, but got denied because, we're too busy right now. A few months later, wanted to take long service leave holidays, but got denied because, we're too busy right now. A few months later, wanted to take long service leave holidays, but got denied because, we're too busy right now. I replied to that email with my resignation, handed in my pass to security, and walked out the door. I was sweating my tits off at a convenience store, in the back room washing dishes or something, and this bitchy lady I worked with came in. Saw me sweating to death, and then went back out and told people I was washing my hair in the sink with the dishes. I said fuck it, this place sucks, and I just never went back. I went back to work at McDonald's after that. I was working when I got the call that my partner of 7 years had been in a terrible car accident while visiting family in Florida. He was in the hospital and his mother called me to tell me he wasn't awake yet. I was obviously devastated and scared out of my mind. Told my coworkers and boss because it was obvious I was panicking, and they told me to take the rest of the weekend off so I could deal with things and prepare and clean his apartment for if he got back. Specifically, they said to come back Monday, and it was a Friday. Next day I was cleaning up his apartment when I got the call from my boss screaming about why I hadn't come into work that day. I told him that I recalled him telling me to take the weekend off and come back Monday. He said to come to work immediately because they needed me. Against my better judgment and my emotional state, I showed up and clocked in. Boss came up to me, threw the stack of checks down on the counter that had just come in, and told me, "If you do that again you're fired." This was someone who had never yelled at me before, or even dared speak to me in any stern way. Prior to my arrival, their store was an absolute mess, and I spent all of my free time, what little there was, reorganizing and cleaning and setting up new systems. For some reason, the fact he chose to start speaking to me this way, and demanding my attention now at that time, it just made me snap. A chord was struck and it resonated, strong. I got the message clearly. He was one of those bosses who became controlling of anyone who became of value to him and his business. The moment you aren't available when they need, or even wanted you to be, they were going to make you feel bad about it, so you were afraid to ask for more personal time, or any other leniencies that took you away from work. I was literally reeling. Saw red. The moment he turned his back, I snatched my check, walked out with a full line of customers at the counter and the phone going off with incoming orders, and drove off. He blew up my phone all day. Never came back or called back. Fortunately, he made it home safe and healed up fine. Unfortunately, he passed away on our anniversary a few years later. I regret every moment I passed up to spend time with him over that job, or any job, for that matter. I know barely anyone is going to read this now that it's buried under a pile of other comments. But it still felt nice to type it out. He gave me literally 72 hours worth of work and insisted it be completed in 36 hours. When I pointed the inconsistency out, he said, "Do what you can." And when I submitted it, he called me, from vacation, to scream at me about mistakes. I deleted everything, walked away, blocked him on everything. ETA, I mean 72 business hours and 36 calendar hours. When I realized I was running the boss's business, and he balked on my timesheet. I was a community engagement officer, which basically means I took a disabled adult out in the community to achieve certain goals, i.e., grocery shopping, some basic concept of money and rudimentary budgeting, etc. He was fine. His mom was a pill. The sort of pill that has been abusing underpaid staff at underfunded social services for entire decades, to the point her grip on what the world owed her, for free, was heavily screwed. Also, all she ever did for herself was sit on her bum in front of Netflix all day. She would call, usually after I had wrapped up for the day and was driving him home, to demand that I stop at a convenience store for cigarettes, booze, or a specific fast food joint on the other side of town because I am apparently a free personal courier. My favorite moment was when she actually had me pick up cigarettes and drop them off at her cousin's, because why not get the whole family in on abusing impoverished public servants? I tried to set simple boundaries with her. You can ask me when I am leaving for X, Y, and X, and she would just show her ass so much. Oh, I don't know when I'll be needing cigarettes. I just call when I do. Oh, I can't afford Instacart or Uber. Even though my kid and I easily eat $1,000 in fast food a month, my car is $500 per month, and we haven't even started talking about booze and cigs. No, paying people for their labor is where I need to cut my corners. So, I cut her off. Anyway, she demands that I go to a convenience store and get her cigarettes. I say no. And then this bitch sits on her fat ass, yards away from a $500 car, and proceeds to text her kid to harass me for what she thought she was owed. It occurred to me that no $10 per hour gig was worth it. So, I dropped him off at her place and told her I was glad she was going to be twitching and sweating all night. Got told by my boss that he doesn't give a shit if I don't have time to spend with my son. Quit on the spot. Me crying in my car after work every day for an hour before getting inside.